Hey there everyone. So I was thinking that when I painted a new floral that maybe I would do a brush test. A lot of you guys have been asking me about the Princeton Neptune series and I happen to have a lot of them. So I'm going to get them out and I'm going to try not to switch to my favorites and just stick with the Princeton Neptune series, see which brushes I end up using from the series, and I'll kind of talk you through the painting as I go along here, showing you which brush, and we'll just kind of have a little brush discussion, if that's okay with you, as I paint a floral. It should be kind of interesting because I really haven't, I haven't ever done this before. Like I've had these brushes for a long time, but I've never really focused on just painting with these. And being that I keep getting new brushes and it's kind of like hard to go back and use the other brushes, but these are great brushes too. So, you know, I want to give everything a fair chance. So let's just put all of them up here and hopefully I have like too many. Well, first of all, we know we're not going to need the 1 inch because that's too big. This is a possibility. I probably won't be painting with these, the 10 or the 12, because they're way too large and not really necessary. But with that being said, let's keep the 12 and lose the 14 because we don't really need a 14 for this size paper. Possibly we could use a 3/4 inch in some of these flats, the 1/2 inch, the 1/4 inch. I have a cat's tongue that is really fun for florals, and then of course this Dagger, 3/8 Dagger is really good. Then there's this size, which is a 1/2 inch flat, which is really nice. And then I have some rounds. So the rounds that are here, I may as well tell you what they are, is the size 8 round, size 4 round, size 6 round, size 4 script, and size 1 script. So a lot of these I've gotten, I think there's 2 sets that you can buy, and then aside from the sets you can buy them individually using my affiliate link below to save 10% on top of the already best prices in the world on these brushes. Okay, so put them here and let's just get started. So I'm going to start with the Quill. This is a Princeton Neptune size 4 Quill. Holds a lot of water. By the way, Neptune brushes are meant to be, they're meant to be like squirrel. So using them, you know, is kind of cool in that way because they're very, very loose, right? Like they don't have a lot of snap. As you can tell, they're pretty bendy, but I really like them. I think they're neat. And I've got Roman Szmal paints here. So just so you can see, the Roman Szmal set is the wood box set, and I'll link that in the description below. It is my favorite set of watercolor, starting with quinacridone magenta. And by the way, you guys, if you like to take floral lessons from me or painting lessons from me, I have 2 courses out right now. One is the Watercolor Florals for Beginners, and the other is a sketchbook class, and it's cool because you can learn everything about watercolor in these classes. I think you'll really like them. So I'm just kind of starting with a just basic wash of 2 flowers, or maybe 3, I don't know, maybe more. I haven't decided yet. I'm trying to just utilize these brushes as much as I can. So this is a great wash brush, pretty happy with that. It definitely gives me more water than I'm willing to admit that I need, so we're just going to mop some of this up because it's a mop brush. So using this beautiful color, I'm actually going to kind of shape my flower out a little bit since it's got so much nice water on it. And that just kind of gives me some rough borders. Ultimately, I'm going to do something else to establish them too, but this is a really good start. So again, this quill, ample water, like way more water than I need, but it really does disperse this beautiful pink very, very well. And as a first wash, can't get any better than that. Pretty happy with it. Would I need a stiffer one? No, not really, because I could switch to a round. And I have other ones that are smaller. This is really neat. It would be kind of cool to have a smaller version of this though. I could see where I would be able to use that very easily, but not like the most important. Just gonna find a place to put these. Okay, so next, I think I'm gonna establish maybe some borders. So I had this idea to use maybe the mineral violet. And this is the smallest script, so I'm going to use it literally to kind of like draw in some areas here. Just to establish, like, I don't know, just something. Maybe give myself some interesting like lines on this flower, just as if I was inking, like doing an ink and wash, or taking a pencil and dry brushing in some pieces. So I'm using it with a little bit of water, but mostly just the mix. And I just want to establish like a very, very loose kind of sketchy shape. I thought that would be kind of fun. And this flower back here. Just put some shape in the center. And we'll see where that goes. I'm just kind of like playing it by ear right now. And no rhyme or reason, I just have an idea of a couple of flowers that I want in some different places. And I really want this to be very sketchy. So I'm just kind of doing some impressions and mark making. Okay, that's enough with this for right now. We'll bring that back later. Well done, script. I like the one. It's not bad. It holds a decent amount of water considering it's so tiny. So next, let's play with a really big floppy brush, because I feel like if I get the cat's tongue out, let's see, I think the cat's tongue is going to be better for establishing my boundaries on my leaves, perhaps. Yeah, so I'll probably visit this one in just a little bit. Let's go a little floppy crazy. I love this brush because it's a Dagger 3/8, but it's really floppy. And so it makes great leaves, but it also can dump a lot of really interesting color in strange ways. So I can literally just kind of like go around my painting and do a mix of dry brushing and just flopping, literally flopping around. And that's one of the fun things about this brush, is it's got the ability to just do crazy things. And like there's no rules, right? You can't really control it. So I like being able to have that really, really loose structure on my watercolors, and this is a great way to do it. So I'm adding some water and some light wash, and I'm now going to go with a little bit darker color and start using this to drop it in. Probably will need to switch brushes for it, but I do want random color, and I'm going to try and not color over these little white areas because I want to maintain those. But I do want some just drops in of color that are very uneven. And this is the brush that I get there with, because it's really difficult to control, but that's what I want. I really like that. Just pushing some more of this color out. Okay. It's looking pretty good, huh? Very sketchy. So now before it dries, next I'm going to take another brush and we're going to load up some darker colors, some darker values. So I tend to think this would be good for it, but I almost want to try one of these flats. But because there's squirrel, you're going to have to use a smaller flat to add the darker value. So let's see what happens when I add a little French ultramarine in here. Yeah, okay. It's working. This work. So it gives a good amount of water to spread the color. And that's what I want here, is I want some areas where this French Ultra is spreading out from the center. Isn't that beautiful? And so far I haven't had to load it much, you know. Perfect. And we'll do one right here. Literally try and shape our flower. Yeah, that's nice. Look at that. It did a good job. Oh, that color is just gorgeous. Just laying it over. I think I'm going to put some swatches over here on the side. I tend to like to do that these days in my paintings because I'm doing so much teaching that it really, I think it helps everybody out. And when I post about these things, you can kind of see the color palette that I used, and then I remember too, because I know what the colors are. Let's do lighter wash there. And a little bit of a purpley wash here. Can't forget that beautiful mix. And then I have to get a little bit of my mineral violet. As a swatch. This is such a pretty color. Roman Szmal makes the most beautiful watercolor paint. Oh yeah, and I did use already manganese violet too. Pretty cool that I put all these colors down so far. Now, I really love the shape of the flowers. I think I'm good almost, but this is going to dry. So let's get a little more dark value in there, I think, into that center, because I love it, but I want just a little bit more like deep contrast, like a little more pow, right? We are going to use this color. So this is Hooker's Green. And right out of the gate, you know, this Roman Szmal has like the coolest greens. They have quite a few nice ones. And I think I'm also going to pull the Aquarius green, which is unique to Roman Szmal. It's like a lovely, like in between, it's almost like this pine color. And then they make a really terrific, like a bluey kind of pine color, which is perylene green. And this is a little different than the perylene green that comes out of Schmincke, which I love. This one, I don't know, I feel like it's got like these bluer undertones, almost like a cobalt undertone. And that's really cool. I like that one. Okay, so the flat brush does swatches really well. That just swatches great. Okay, so let's put this one aside. I'm making sure I put these on their sides because they're wet and I don't want the water dumping right into the ferrule. Okay, so now to add color. So you have all these brushes for details and stuff. I think this is not needed just yet, but I think to add color, because I want the flexibility of being able to drop in color, let's just go with this one because it'll hold a lot of water. Let's see what it does. This is the 8, and I need like some mineral violet going into just around the center. And I'm hoping that it's still wet enough to spread. And yeah, it is kind of spreading. And if it doesn't, it's okay. And we'll do it on the other flowers too. I just feel like I want a little more dark. So then I'm going to mix it with, I'm trying to decide here. Let's see what happens when I mix it with the Cypress burnt sienna. It gets very mauve-y. I like it, but not exactly what I'm going for. How about if I add a little bit of like phthalo blue to it? Yeah, that's the dark purple I'm looking for, just a little darker purple. Okay, so we're just going to add a little more phthalo blue to the mineral violet and drop it in here. And that's just going to give me my darker value that I'm looking for, the vision in my head. And I'm using the 8 round just to kind of press it in. Okay, that's looking good. Yeah, that was the darker value I needed. That looks really good. Okay, we'll rinse this out. So going to a smaller brush because I need something to pull it out. So I could either use the script or the really, really small script, which is the one, and I think I'm going to use the really small script. So picking up some more of that color, I'm going to try and pull out some veins. And some of the areas it's going to be dry and some of them it's not. So we're going to have like some different effects going. And I want to have it loose. I really just don't want to there you go. I'm trying to avoid it being too perfect. Like I really don't want perfectly straight lines. I just want kind of like natural lines and some to be broken. Just to kind of like lead the eye around, coming out of the center of the flower. And then some of these areas where it meets another flower, I'm just going to kind of loosely shape the petal. And it's just kind of like leading my eye. Now, ultimately, I'm going to use green to negative paint in a lot of stuff on this flower, but it's a very sketchy looking flower. Cool. That's really neat. I love the way this looks. I'm going to grab a little more ultramarine and mix it in there. And let's just throw some of this purple down here so I remember that we did mix like a plummy shade. And we also have this bluer shade. It's kind of neat to do this because it's hard to paint boxes with this little brush. It's kind of neat to do it this way because at the end of you creating a painting, then you can look back in your sketchbook or, you know, whatever, when you're doing these studies, because this is just a study, and remember how many colors it actually took. I mean, and this isn't even the full range because there's a lot of lighter ones in here from just painting different things, you know? Okay, we want to leave as much of that white space as we can. Now let's work on the greens. So for the greens, I think I decided to start with the cat's tongue. So I'm going to start with the lighter shade of green and kind of work my way around. Again, like kind of negative paint in some leaves or impressions of leaves. And I'm going to do it in areas that will give my flower more shape. That's a lot of water. There's a learning curve to these because sometimes, you know, you might not be used to getting so much water on the brush because it is really like squirrel for sure. Okay, so we just want some like dry brush effects going through here with a little bit of the lighter green. Cool. And we're going to take a little bit of the darker green. So this is the, let's try the perylene green. And I'm going to use it just to add just a little more depth to some of these leaves so that they're not all the same color. Love this color. It's so pretty. Let's go ahead and use it to kind of shape some of the areas here. Gosh, I really like this. I think I could use a little more shape. I don't know if maybe doing a little bit of shaping up at the top will do really well because I've got that Aquarius green. So let's see if if I block that in there, because there's a flower shape here, and then perhaps just continue on here. That's pretty good. And I can even kind of come in a little bit. Just to draw around the flower. Yeah, like that. And that's kind of giving my petals just a bit more shape and dimension. So I think I'm going to do that same thing here. It's going to go around with the two different greens. And what that's doing is it's just kind of using a really dark value to make some of the petals stand out. I really like that. Yeah, to me that looks really cool. I don't really need to do it over here as much because it's kind of like a little bit of an afterthought, and I kind of like the way this is swooshing out. So maybe we'll just encourage it to swoosh just a little more. And we could take some dark and just give it a little overlay, like a few little swipes of the different greens, following that pattern, you know? That's actually very pretty. So this here, I'm wondering, actually, I don't really think I need to do a whole lot with that. I think I'm pretty good. I've got like a lot of the shapes here highlighted very well. You know? Yeah, that looks really awesome. I'm pretty much done. Okay, so one other thing I could do is just use the rigger a little bit. So let's take that rigger brush. What did I do with it? The little rigger brush. Oh, here it is. And we could probably use the other one too, just to see how, if this one like does a really good job or the other one. And I think I kind of need a contrasting color on this, like one of the darks. So I wonder if I should take like a little ultramarine and maybe mix it with one of the greens, like the bluer green. So I get kind of like an indigo look. And yeah, I like that. And I'm just gonna drop in some of these little strikes, but I think they're a little bit, I like them. Yeah, the set doesn't have an indigo, so just mixing ultramarine with, I mean, it does have a Payne's Gray, but Payne's Gray can sometimes be a little powdery, so I like the ultramarine mixed with the praline green. I think that this is, because it's already in here, and I could just kind of create some neat little shapes. And use it just to outline my flowers just a bit more. It just gives like a little bit of more motion and activity through, you know, making it a little more loose and wild. And you know, it's watercolor, so sometimes you just feel like painting. You know what I mean? You just want to like strike through and do some really cool stuff and see what happens. So I'm going to take some of this extra color here and just kind of go around the center just with some dots, just because that's like, you know, the center of the flower. And by doing that and adding a little more depth here, it'll make the appearance that the center is dropping in just a bit more. Giving myself just a little bit more shading. And I'm just kind of using the rigger to go through and just drop in some lines. Just by eye. You know, if you're a beginner, listen, this is definitely not a beginner lesson by far. I highly recommend that you take my beginner watercolor class, my florals for beginners, because if you want to get here, you've got to start there, because there's a lot of techniques that I'm using in this that I teach in that class. So I recommend that you don't get overwhelmed, and if you're a beginner, definitely come take that class. Oh, I mixed that beautiful light purple. It's like a purple gray, and that makes just a gorgeous shadow for the back of this flower. Okay, I think I am so good. Boy, I really love how this turned out. And they were easy to paint with. They really did have a nice flow. They delivered tons of water, more than I even needed, but I really enjoyed painting with them. So I was using the 4 script, and then I used the 1 script in areas where the 4 was a little bit wide. And I was able to get some really deep colors here, which is really cool. I also used the cat's tongue for a little while to get some leaf shapes. And this is a 1/2 inch. I used the 8 to drop in the darker values, because it has a decent amount of water and it dropped them in really nicely. I used this just to like loosen up the style. If I had more room, I could actually do really cool leaves with this, right? Because this is just fun to have on hand, but this was just really fun to just mess around with and get like that really loose style. And then we used a little bit of the flat brush, especially for swatching and delivering some decent paint actually with all that water. And then we started out with this as the wash brush, which was a 4, gave me way more water than I deserved, but it worked out perfect because the water stayed where it needed to be, and there was enough of it on the paper for this to mold out and shape really well. And I don't think it would have done that if that wouldn't have been on the paper like that. Now I did notice that like here, this is a little bit dark, so let's use this brush to drop in some water and fix it. So the paint just kind of dried so deep that I kind of want like more looser color. So I'm just using this to reactivate the watercolor a bit and move it around to make it more shadowy and less inky, because I think it just, you know, this is a hard one to remove color with because it's so soft, but it's working. I can actually use one of these smaller brushes for it. This is the 4 round would work really well for this because it would get in there. And I just want to break it up a bit because I did not like the way it dried like that. And we'll go through here, just strike out, and I think I'm going to drop in a little bit of this bright pink in a few places, just where again here in a couple places, I think once I added that really dark color, it just lost so much transparency, but I can just kind of dab a little water over it and it'll just loosen it right up. Remember, you can fix anything in watercolor, and make it better. I mean, you can basically scrub away at many of this and, and get lighter versions of it and see what layers, you ended up with underneath. Okay, I don't want to scrub away too much of it. That's nice. Beautiful. Okay, so now let's go back and mix a little bit of the mineral violet. And a little bit of my ultra. And then we're just gonna add a few drops on the wet areas so that it's not all rubbed away. So what I did is I cleaned it up a little bit and took some of the darkness off because I didn't like the way it was looking. Like it just kind of looked like a chunk of really dark value. And I wanted to see some of the granulation. So I broke it up with a little bit of water, and I'm doing that again here. Put it back on, add a little water to it, let it spread out and kind of like create a little bit of a backwash of the colors. Add a little blue in some areas. Like here, see how it's like really dark and this looks like more spread out. I really like the way this is looking. Like I really want more of this beautiful center value. So we're just going to add a little water just to break it up. Keeping it in place, but just breaking it up, it gives some of the transparency back to the color. Roman Szmal colors really are so easy to manipulate. They're such a good make of paint for the price. They're just amazing. They just have a lot of terrific values and qualities. Gorgeous paints. And I never have trouble removing them, like see I can brighten up that little area there and I'm pulling out, like getting just a little more light. And then here I can get a little more light and get that lighter pink working just a bit. Pull away some of these. So you're never really stuck, I can even work away at this line here, blurring this line out just a bit. Yeah, like that. Same here. We can clean water and just push it back just a bit. And that gave me like a nice little look at that little area. So I can take my manganese violet, mix it with some water, mix it with a little bit of the pink, and just get like a really nice little pink wash in there. So pretty. Peel some of this back and just give it a little pink wash. I'm going to dry it and see what I've got. Then I can drop in a little of the pinks as a glaze. And this is just like tweaking. You can see how I, remove some, add some, until I just kind of get the look I want and have enough layers, interesting things going on inside the flower where you're like looking at it more. Look at how pretty that is. See how pretty it is? It's so, so pretty. All right, let's remove the tape and see what we ended up with, shall we? I can never tell, like I can photograph it with my phone and then I'll know more of what I got. Otherwise I have to remove the tape. I'm really happy with this one. I like it. I had a good painting session with Neptune brushes. I have been bringing in all kinds of new brushes to try and reviewing them on the channel so that you guys can make some good decisions and try out some different brushes, because brushes are so much fun. Brushes and paints are my favorite things to review. I mean, paper, it is what it is. It's like, it's always got to be 100% cotton for me, because it's such a struggle otherwise. It really is. Like, everything paints better on 100% cotton. And believe it or not, I have people that actually want to buy these. So even my studies end up getting sold. And so, you know, why not use professional grade watercolor, so you can always get your best done. And if you end up with anything really good and people want to buy it, it's already on 100% paper. Okay, so looking at this, there's a really dark area here, and I'm kind of feeling like I could break that up a little bit. I don't know if I'm being obsessive, but it's just standing out too much for me. So very easily, I can just blend that and push it back. And literally, I don't really have to do it. I just want a thinner line, so I don't really have to do much. I'm just thinning out the line in between the two flowers, because I feel like it's just a little blobby, and I prefer it not to be like that. Perfect. Yeah, like that. And then let's go do the other one. I just feel like it stands out too much, and I don't want this to be more of a focal point pulling the eye out. I think I would rather you see the centers of the flowers and all the pretty colors. So just bringing this back to a finer line would be better. Now I could do this with a synthetic brush that was a little more scrubby, a lot faster, but this is working. I'm just going really slow and pulling out areas. So just using clean water. This is actually a lesson I do in the Watercolor Floral for Beginners class. Is this almost like transparent watercolor painting. So pushing paint around is definitely part of getting transparent watercolors and also semi-transparent watercolors. I like some of these little shots of pink here, so I'm just going to go ahead and put the pink values there. What I like about the Neptune is that even in the smaller brushes, it's pretty neat, because you literally can have so much water coming off of the brush that it allows you to do quite a few things, you know? I love this pink. This quinacridone pink from Roman Szmal is just such a beautiful color. Okay. All right, so now let's kind of stand back and take a look. I love it. I'm really happy with it. It's so, so pretty. I've got like light pinks and purples and dark pinks, and I can even put a little more pink there because I feel like it can totally handle it. And it's still wet, so if I drop it in, it's literally gonna sit so nicely. Some of these areas that are still damp, I'm just gonna add a little more pink to them because they'll disperse and you'll be able to see it as it dries. This is so pretty. What a joy to paint. That was really wonderful. Such a good experience with these Neptune brushes. All right, guys, well, tell me what you think. Let me know if you like what I did, and if you want to see more of these where I take brushes and paints and make them work out no matter what. And if you do, this will be a fun series to do for sure. Don't forget to come and sign up for my watercolor classes. I would love to have you learning with me if you're a beginner. If you are not a beginner and you are more advanced, then certainly let me know, because I have other classes coming out doing more bold and more advanced watercolor techniques. So I would be only too happy to see you sign up for the the mailing list for those, for when I release them. Otherwise, I will be doing more stuff on the channel for sure. And happy painting. Have fun. Bye.